Okay, so now we're live on YouTube again.
Awesome.
That is great sign. Not foreboding at all. Uh, gonna wait for Nico Paul to show back up.
There it is.
Some good news out of Robotin. Fuck. Need to get Nico Paul back for the Slavic pronunciation.
Exactly. I'm not going to do much better than you, mate.
Well, I look like a ghoul, and that is, I mean, actually, not great, not terrible, but at least it's working.
Mm.
Ooh, shit. Good news out of Robotine. Robotine? Ah, fuck, whatever. Sorry for any hold up. We're just waiting for at least one of our hands to come back. He's Nikopol, but Nikopol is not all that he does. He is a servant of society in a very civil fashion. To put it very cryptically. So he does in fact know what he's talking about. He's not just bullshitting himself. So in about gonna start talk. You want to start talking about like 3 minutes? Actually, Sam already introduced himself. You're an officer, right? In the ADF?
Not officer, but
Oh, non-com.
I'm in
Okay.
the ADF, yeah.
Non-com in the ADF. Okay. An experienced non-com in the ADF, interested in all matters Ukraine for since 2014. So, I oddly enough, instead of talking to grunts, which is a thing that everybody should be doing, yeah, you sort of everyone or most of the talking heads have a habit of listening to, talking heads who don't really know what they're talking about. So it's always, not always. It should be the default to ask people who actually have been trained to conduct operations or offensive, defensive, just to do the whole war thing. Questions. So that's, yeah. I don't know. I think I rehearsed that 3 times.
No, it's the Australian Army is as a much smaller force is a lot more focused on small unit tactics than a lot of military, just because we don't have the larger units to sort of conduct those larger operations. So it is interesting to see how, particularly with Ukraine, how larger operations are taking place. But we'll have to we'll get into that a little bit more once Nikopol gets here. Particularly, I want to talk about what leaked German report, the ridiculousness of it in particular.
All right, sweet.
Oh my god.
So I'm pretty sure my computer is pretty strong, and every time it has a look at Google Earth, it wants to uh, delete itself. So so if anybody wants to like highlight on a certain spot, just drop a comment, or just drop a comment, and we can pan over to it. Because with this, we have integrated uh, Project Alcynth's Ukraine control map, Project Alcynth's, sorry, record of Russian losses that are confirmed by date. E.g., this one. Wow. Okay, that is. I probably should have worked that out. It says 2022 6/11 there. It should be saying, okay, that's damn. Can't win them all, I guess. Well, but each of these is a Russian loss. As you can see on the map, some of them have the recorded dates as well. Not all of them do, because it's a very collaborative project. We also have a global rail network that's completely, I guess, shows where the rail lines are using data from, I think, OpenStreetMaps. Military units. It's not gonna. Fuck. Okay. Well, this one. That's gonna be annoying as hell, but as you can see here, it's the 234th Battalion of the 128th TDF Brigade. It shows the last known location, or it's supposed to. This one doesn't show it, but this one, Jesus, last known location June 13th, 2023. So this is probably the closest you'll get to an order of battle and positions for maps for the Russian and Ukrainian military, unless you're actually in the Russian or Ukrainian military.
That's a good tool there.
Then you have Brady F. Frick's, I guess, analysis of satellite imagery showing Russian fortifications, Russian and Belarusian fortifications. This URL, all of the little red dots link to satellite imagery. Even though in some cases Google is a bit splotchy, right? They don't actually update their satellite imagery all that often. You can see when they do here. Just to pan over to Bakhmut a bit, you can see shells impacts, but not really anything you think is very important, because there are in fact fortifications here that have been geo-confirmed, but they're not like showing up there. Oh yeah. Yes, we will start talking about the main thrust of Ukraine's counteroffensive in a second, right? Though, how should we put it? They're sort of pretty clear from, I guess, the force distributions and groupings that Ukraine is trying to push down the T-518 highway to sever this rail line here. We should probably start labeling rail lines, even though only like 1 million people around the world actually care at any given time. But if they sever this rail line, right, the Russians don't really have any alternative routes to supply this entire force grouping.
It's probably probably one of the reasons why they've been so aggressive about holding their forward positions, just because they don't have that depth from Ukrainian long range fires to protect it.
That raises a sort of a good question. If you were the battalion NCO or brigade NCO for one of the formations of, I guess, say, the 137th Battalion of the 35th Marines, and you had to assault towards Staromayorsky, just a sort of idle question before Nikopol gets back. How would you do it? Or how would you... fuck. The yellow's not really helping.
Well, just before we start, the way the Ukrainians have been doing it since the initial pushes has been using light infantry to try to clear those positions before the Russians can bring long-range artillery down on them. They've been very effective in their counter-battery fire. The Russians really don't have an answer to the HIMARS in that sort of capacity. I think that's the only way they can do it. They can do these grab and holds with infantry. Until they get past those minefields, there's really no way to do that sort of armoured thrust that people have been talking about. Even then, with the multiple lines of defence, I think the only option really is grab and hold and try to bring those lines of supply under artillery fire and then just slowly squeeze the Russians out. I don't think there's going to be any dramatic break in the line. But who knows? Nothing is certain in war. But it looks like the strategy that they're putting forward will serve them, is the best option they've got available with the tools they've got available at the moment. There's nothing under air superiority, enemy air superiority, and with the Russians still having a pretty high shell count, I don't think an armoured thrust is gonna be successful.
What do you think of the sort of attritional strategy that Ukraine is adopting so far?
It's the best option they have available to them. They've been pretty... The Storm Swords have... Storm Shadows, sorry. Have been really effective in allowing the Ukrainians to start using their multiple launch rocket systems against the Russians' artillery systems, just because it has freed them up for that use. There has been a number of Russian sources talking about a heavy loss in artillery systems, a lack of counter-battery radars. The Russians do lack that sort of long-range counter-battery defense. The Lancets are very effective in the more shorter-range ones, but the extended-range ammunition that's being supplied to the Ukrainians are allowing them the advantage in that front. Sorry, what was the question?
Oh yeah, about their attritional strategy.
Oh yes. So they wearing down the Russians' artillery systems, and then doing these grab and holds. That's probably the best way to go forward at the moment. It's just a matter of keeping Ukrainians supplied while that's going on, because this is very costly in terms of artillery shells, in terms of ammunition, in lives, unfortunately, as well. The supply of cluster ammunition has extended the amount of time that the Ukrainians can keep doing this. I don't think that the ammunition itself is going to be anything particularly special, particularly against fortifications, and as lots of people have mentioned, cluster munitions do have their own, they sort of create their own little minefield as you go forward. But without them, I don't think the Ukrainians would have had the shell supply to maintain the offensive in the coming months. So it has extended the timeline out where they can keep launching attacks. but it's still going to be a long fight.
So, what do you think of their choice of axes of attack? Initially, they were sort of attacking on a wide front. There was the assault over by Tokmak, or I guess north of Tokmak. North of Tokmak.
I think they launched another assault this morning north of Tokmak. Robertson, they've had some success there. The only problem is with Robertson, even though it is the quickest route down to Tomac, it is between two heights. So hopefully they've managed to, there's a bit of confusing information, but hopefully they've managed to clear one of those heights, and that might make holding the village, which has been taken beforehand, a little bit more successful. But I still think the southern axis, even though it is the only axis that has a potential for a major strategic victory, is becoming less of a focus. That's just my impression. I really want to hear what Nikopol says about that, but my impression is that there has been a decision to try to focus on Bakhmut to secure the sort of victory that they need to maintain that Western political support. But I want to hear what Nikopol has to say about that.
Fuck. Shit.
Where is it?
Nikopol doesn't have Discord. Okay. Well, let's. You know they say if it's ghetto and it works, it's not ghetto. Well, it's still ghetto, but at least it works. Okay, so I'm gonna. My computer's gonna have a stroke, but I'm gonna see if I'm gonna send Nikopol another Zoom link, even though it'll kick him out in like half an hour. I'm not even sure if you'll be able to hear him.
Always teething issues on the first time.
Actually, you'll probably show up twice since you're on Zoom also. Sorry, folks. We're just waiting for our Eastern European or Central European friend, who is quite knowledgeable, to show back up. He doesn't use Discord, even though he's not old. He's not that young. Oh yeah. So, what's your MOS? All right. I guess that's sort of DoD parlance. Uh, are you an infantry NCO? Okay. So since waiting for three people to show back up or show up, so we're gonna talk a second about this since this was a pain in the ass to scrape together, and the image was quite large, so even Google Earth didn't like it. Uh, oh, so we all know what happened to the Nova. Actually, nobody really knows what happened to the Nova Kakhovka Dam. Uh, the dam was blown, and well, all the water in the Kakhovka Reservoir started to run out. There's potential problems at the nuclear power plant, which is Enerhodar. Usually, it looks like
I think luckily many of the problems have been minimised there. I think they've shut down most of the reactors, so apparently the amount of water that they've got in the dam there, the reservoir there, they won't have any immediate issues. But who knows what's going to happen in the longer term.
So it sort of creates a unique opportunity, right? Which is normally, I'm gonna pull up a ruler here. The distance, say at this point, is like 12 kilometers. Over here, it's there now. At its lowest, it's about 400 meters at most, or 400 meters, as sort of a lower reach, right? And the Russians don't actually have all that much in the way of defenses monitoring the Kakhovka Reservoir, which, okay, yeah, technically this spot is old Akhmat Grozny, which is one of the Chechen units. Akhmat Krepost, another Chechen unit. What is this? Company and battalion. The Russians don't... You're saying?
Oh, apparently they have started to lay down anti-personnel mines, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency. So they are rebuilding the defences that were swept away after the dam. Well, a lot less than what they previously was.
And this is south of Kakhovka?
That's near the nuclear power plant itself.
Ooh. Which is right here. Oh yeah, the IEA wobbled a bit on that, whether or not it was actually happening, and then even though the Ukrainian government said, hey, pretty sure they're mining this facility. But apparently we have a habit of not wanting to believe them until we can't deny what they're saying, which, fair enough. Ooh.
I think there was some confusion whether they were mining the facility itself or mining around the facility. But there are mines in the area now.
That would make sort of an assault on the... Oh, okay, that's sort of a weird ace in the hole, right? Because if you want to conduct an offensive across the Kakhovka Reservoir, right, you have to seize Enerhodar first, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't really risk the Russians blowing it up and spewing radiation all across your assaulting force. But if you only have to defend the one facility, right, that risks it's yeah. Well, yeah. You don't really have to defend all that much else, even though if you sort of take a look at this map.
Hello, hello.
Yeah,
Hey,
the
Richard.
water levels have.
Ooh, shit. Did you hear Richard?
Uh, Wait, are you using multiple platforms?
Multiple video chat platforms because Zoom kept kicking itself out. If you want to join Discord, that should also work.
On Discord, I mean, I'd prefer it. Where on Discord?
Oh, look up Zoom or scroll back up in the group chat.
Uh-huh. Yeah, let me get that. That should work.
Can other people hear the Discord? That's a good question.
Morning, Richard.
Yeah.
There we go. Or not. Wait, let me turn off Zoom. Okay, this should be working now. I mean, from Zoom I could hear Discord. Don't know if the Discord could hear me though.
Oh, I could hear you.
Oh, all right. I could turn on my camera. Oh wow, my hair looks dreadful. Holy shit.
Don't worry about it. I look like
That's
a
the most
fucking
important thing right now, okay? Don't patronize me. Alright? Yeah, my hair is very important to this conversation.
Okay. Yeah. It is in fact capturing. Wait, is it capturing Discord? I'm going. Wait. One of you guys talk.
Hello, 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 testing, testing, testing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You're good.
Alright.
So, Richard, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Richard Haney, let's say. That's the name I use on here. I studied military history, and I'm finishing my master's in security studies and international relations. So, yeah, I've been following the war pretty closely ever since it started, and my claim to fame is not being an insane person. Basically, like giving a more measured take a lot of the time as to what is going on and not going off the rails. And also, even though like I'm not a very experienced like analyst or whatever, I was able to suss out all the really bad ones very quickly. So I'm also glad about that. I mean, I was mocking Trent Teleco where it wasn't even fun to do so. When it was like when people weren't mocking him, they were like, "Okay, yeah, he's bad, but let me tell you, let's hear him out." Like, no, man, I fucking mocked that guy so much. I couldn't stand him from the beginning. I don't know. I just like I can't stand like the very sensationalist ways that people cover this war. So yeah, yeah, I like to talk about it. I like to talk about the war. That's my thing.
Nice, nice. Uh, Sam is a soldier in the ADF. They're Australian Defence Forces. So
Very nice.
he's also been following the war since 2014.
So you have fried way more brain cells on this.
Oh, exactly. I also claim to fame in that I have also fought a member of the Donetsk militia, albeit in a strip club in Moscow. But
Damn, dude. That's mental, man. So have you guys gone into this whole thing? Have you been going into it for a while?
I'm still sort of pretty basic. We're still getting into the technical issues, but we were just talking about the loss the explosion at the dam, and how that's changed the sort of strategic picture along the river.
Oh yeah, Richard, can you see the live stream video? It should be showing the image.
I'll have to join the live stream. Yeah, where have you linked the live stream in your? Oh wait, on YouTube. Is this
Yes. Instead of
on. Okay, 1 second. Oh yeah, I see it. I see it. And yes, I think you're messing with the settings now, but I can't see myself. Wait, if I move. Oh yeah. I can see that.
yeah, this is a bit janky as hell. I don't think Zoom, OBS, and YouTube anticipated having all three of their platforms linked together like this.
You have the very nice deployment map, I see. Where can I? That's in the Analytica
Yeah.
website?
Yep, on the live stream page. The files are separate on the live stream page, but you can sort of download them together. I have to warn you though, the Dnipro River button is quite. The file, Google wants to have a stroke every time it tries to load it in. So you have to sort of load it as an external layer, and even then you sort of have to hew it down.
Okay.
You have to, because it wants to present pictures, and every time it layers a picture, it gives you one of these shadows, right? And the shadows are irritating. They're not like groundbreaking or stopping, but
Yeah. Where can I download it?
also on the website.
Also the website.
You just have to scroll down a bit.
I'm really bad at this shit, man. I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't be allowed to be this bad.
Oh
Stuff
no!
like this, because I'm a zoomer. Like I should be fine. You know. It's not.
Every time,
It's not allowed.
every time I feel bad about my internet skills, I remember the federal government exists, and they're still. They always,
Oh yeah, these people don't know shit, man. They could get scammed by like Nigerian prince scams. Like, oh no, an actual dignitary is stuck in a remote place. I need to help him out. Guys, what do you mean it's a scam? Guys, no, it was in the computer. It told me it's important. The computer doesn't lie.
oh yeah, George Bede said, "Hi, my son."
Ah, yes. It's a running joke where we basically just kind of say who fucked whose mother. It's charming, but it's drawn on for a little too long. But he's unambiguously losing this battle. My charms are not to be trifled with.
That is a
But
true
yeah,
fact.
no, this looks really good. Man, it's a fucking front and a half. Jeez. Yeah. So what have you guys thought like so far of this whole offensive? Because I think people are kind of souring on it.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, that.
Wait.
I would say that it's failed to achieve what at least both the Ukrainians and a lot of Western governments hoped it would achieve. I think there's still the opportunity for successes, but those opportunities are reducing. The idea that this was going to be another success like Kharkiv or even Chernihiv is probably not likely to happen now. There has been the fact that the Biden government is sending over Richard Huss to Moscow says that they are probably looking at a way out. in the short to medium term. In fact, there was more reporting on that recently. I don't think that if this isn't a success, there's going to be another major shipment of arms like there was before this offensive. I think Bakhmut is probably the best chance for the Ukrainians for success in this, and something that they can take to their backers and say, we need to continue the fight. But Bakhmut itself is strategically dead. Even as a political victory, it doesn't have the whole Donbass front is too heavily fortified for either side to maintain major advances. But the Ukrainians are going to launch apparently a major push in the south, so hopefully that will have some success. If they can get their artillery in range of those main supply lines, then it will get a lot more dicey for the Russians, but they're going to have to work for it, unfortunately.
Yeah, so, I mean, in my view, the artillery part of this offensive has been going probably the best for the Ukrainians. Their striking in the Russian rear has been quite successful, getting, even some depots, like command and control, they have been doing some good work. What we were hoping for, this big breakthrough, I don't think this can happen unless the Russians are properly exhausted and they really don't have reserves to push in to the fight. And I feel like, sure, we could say in abstract that if Ukraine keeps putting on pressure and keeps fighting, that they could at some point lead the Russians to the edge of exhaustion, and they could probably break through maybe the first line of defense, and then they would have to... The thing is, it's really hard to develop speed because of the lines of defense. Even if the lines of defense are really, really weakly held, it is something that you need to deal with, and it's hard to have 1 or 2 days where you advance non-stop without meeting any obstacles. So no matter what, they would have to fight for every line of defense and count on the Russians being exhausted. And while in abstract we could say, okay, yeah, if they continue on pushing forever, they could do this. The problem is that pushing and attritioning the Russians causes attrition on the Ukrainian side as well. And the Ukrainians are understandably averse to taking equipment losses, which are going to be necessary if they're going to be pushing through minefields and trenches and anti-tank ditches, because the fucking Western allies they have don't send the equipment they need. They don't send adequate numbers. So the Ukrainians are understandably, okay, it was painstaking to build those new brigades. We had to train people from scratch while all our veterans were fighting like an absolute slog in Bakhmut. And now we have the brand new brigades and we don't want to scratch them. And I understand the feeling. Because if they really want to make progress, they would have to say, okay, fucking 2 or 3 of these brigades are going to be absolutely busted. There's going to be nothing left, but we're going to break through. And I think that's a hard call to make, because really, we're kind of in the air. We don't exactly know how much longevity the Russians have on that front. If the Ukrainians truly blow their load and the line doesn't actually break completely, they could be in trouble. It's not an easy call to make, and I feel like they are playing it safe. So they're saying, okay, unless we're sure that this is actually going to work, we're not going to go all in and sacrifice units to achieve a big breakthrough.
The fact that the 58th Army is still complaining about a lack of rotation means that the Russians either don't have any reserves, which seems a bit optimistic, or the fact that those reserves haven't been committed yet, which means that if the Ukrainians do launch that major brigade-sized assault and get tied up in that first or second line of defence, they would be very vulnerable to a counter-offensive by the Russian units based there.
Yeah, and to be fair, if you're going to launch a major assault, you need to have, an objective in mind. What would be the major objective? Reaching Tokmak? Breaking through where Plohoy is and trying to get to Berdyansk? What's the plan? It seems that all the major arteries upon which a major brigade-sized offensive could take place are the most heavily defended parts of the line, the ones that have the most fortifications. And to be fair, we've seen so much struggle over the past, like, basically 2 months, and we're still, like, now there's fighting in Robotine for the first, like, the outskirts of the first line of defense. It is insane to consider. We haven't even seen exactly how the Ukrainians are tackling the Dragon's Teeth, the anti-tank trenches. We've only seen how they're tackling tree lines, ATGMs, and minefields. That's it. That's all we've seen so far. So I don't know. Like, they must be skeptical as well. Like, they must be saying, okay, fuck. Like, we've gone this far now with some bigger attacks. They were kind of dicey, and we still haven't seen the first line exactly how our boys will deal with them. Like, we need to think a bit about it in, like, the more, I don't know, like, the operational level. Like, the fucking whoever's in charge on that front would have to be, more concerned about questions such as these. Thankfully, it's not Sirski, man. I think he's still in Bakhmut. Sirski would be like, okay, fuck it, listen, guys, it doesn't matter if I lose everything. I will absolutely be attacking. I will be attacking until I'm throwing cooks and drivers at it. Like, that's my take of this guy. maybe I'm slandering, but fuck. That's my take. I don't know, man.
No, he made the comment recently that it was a matter of honour to retake Bakhmut, and any time talk about honour in a major conflict, I get a bit worried.
Yeah, it's like Bushido, like his level. Like, we're going in, it's a matter of honour. We'll kamikaze the fucking SG-25s if we have to. Like, hey, maybe that's the strategy they need, but I don't think they are in a position to say, okay, yeah, if, like, let's try things out, and if we sacrifice, like, a brigade or two, it's no biggie. They don't want to do that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's been a lot of talk in the Western press about how the Ukrainians aren't doing combined arms correctly, or the Germans particularly. That pissed me off.
Man, who's fucking the Germans of all people? Jesus, man.
Yeah. The fact is that if you're under launching brigade-sized combined arms attacks, the enemy has air superiority. The enemy, at this moment at least, has more artillery. And the fact that EW means that there was a Ukrainian officer who was complaining that past 100 meters, they can't communicate with neighboring units, so that's why they have to sequence all their operations. You can have all those issues, and then hear Western backers who haven't fought a war against the peer power in 20, 30 years, complaining that you're not doing it right, and that you're using too much artillery is just absolutely ridiculous.
Man, honestly, like, there's ways you can be pissed about, like, Western chauvinism. This is I think the most valid one. Like, looking at a German commentator or general saying, yes, they don't know how to do the combined arms warfare. They haven't learned from the best. And, like, you motherfuckers haven't made, like, an offensive maneuver in, like, 70 years. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, seriously, put the German army where the Ukrainian was in February, 2022, and tell me, like, the 3 days to Kyiv wouldn't be just a meme. Like, come on. They would be in there, like, the Bundeswehr would be like, okay, let's try to mobilize. Mobilize who? And then they realize, oh, we have 10,000 men that can fight, actually, instead of saying...
We actually haven't got any spare parts. We need to order some more.
Yeah, actually, we're just a big, Leopard factory for the rest of Europe. That's what we are. We haven't built an army in years. We just built and refurbished Leopards. That's it.
Here we go. There's a quote that said that they don't want to have combat experienced leaders for the new brigades, that new officers who only receive German training show a higher level of success in training and learning. And I just can't think of anything more idiotic than that. The fact that they don't want combat tested leaders for these new heavily equipped brigades because they don't do the training like the Germans want. It's just...
The thing is, like, they're sending like soldiers there to those training units, especially officers that have usually way more combat experience, like and actual understanding of running a real army than their instructors do. So like they go there and they're just milling around, like being taught basically like next to nothing, maybe a couple of tricks that they hadn't, I don't know, thought of, or maybe a couple of techniques that from like German manuals or whatever. But the German guys, like you get a German tanker that he's supposed to teach Ukrainian tankers, right? The Ukrainian tankers have been fighting like, you know, like they've been doing miracles for like the whole damn war. And you're supposed to teach them. You're going to teach them what? Like, how can you look them in the eyes and say, yeah, dude, I know, I'll teach you. I can't see that. I don't know, man. Like, I see a lot of, some people like asked, and they said, okay, what if they don't want combat experienced, officers because they wouldn't show the same zeal or, I don't know, suicidal, bravery in the attack? Maybe they would be more reserved, but I don't see how that would be better. Like, I really don't.
No, it's there was a lot of the early attacks were probably quite hampered by the fact that a lot of the officers were new and didn't have that sort of experience under the stress of fire. I think Michael Kaufman was bringing up the point that it may have been better for Ukraine to pull old brigades off the line and instead re-equip them with Western equipment. That, my impression would be that would have been the correct move. But it would have meant that Bakhmut would have fallen a lot quicker. And that, again, that's the trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, man, I would have liked to see, like, I don't know, the 92nd, like, mechanized, 93rd mechanized, maybe, what was it, the 4th tank brigade, or that did the attack in Kharkiv. Was it the 4th or the 5th? I'm not sure. I think it was the 4th. Whatever, like those experienced units, if they were equipped and it said, you know, you're training, the new soldiers you're training, it's fine. Put them in, like, equip them with some motor rifle, basically, style brigades and put them in the line. Like, it doesn't matter if you lose, like, a few kilometers in the Donbass with, like, Russians bashing their head against hills and, like, and industrial areas and ravines and forests and all the annoying shit that's in the Donbass for anyone who's attacking. Fine, let them do that. Let them even gain some kilometers. Let them get close to Sloviansk, whatever the fuck. As long as you need to be, like, I don't know, focusing on what you should be, what your strategic goal is. And not like, let's hold Bakhmut to the last to show that we can.
Yeah, I think Zali's original plan until at least February, where he was throwing a lot of newly raised TDF units in to preserve those sort of battalions for this offensive, was the correct move. But it's politics. You got to remember that everyone's got to deal with that, and they might not have got as much equipment if the European powers thought that there was the danger of that collapse. I think the big thing that has been missing from a lot of discourse is, this is something that I've been looking into quite a bit, is the massive hiring rush that the Russian defense industry has been going through recently. This is what my worry comes in, because it seems that particularly China is supplying. My impression was that the Russian defense industry would have a problem not with producing new units, but by producing the components needed for new units. It seems like China has filled the gap for the Russians. They have also been purchasing a lot of sites and things back from their old customers, such as India. That has allowed them to increase production quite a bit. I did a deep dive into EMP3 production recently. It does rely a lot on company press releases. By the look of it, the Russians have managed to achieve at least a tripling of BMP3 production. This is just new units, not refurbished ones. Press releases is going into, apparently they've already produced by by June, the equal to last year, which was double 2019 when they had the BMP3 contract for Iraq, and there was also a domestic contract. So I would, and apparently the military department, the MOD is looking to increase production in the second half of the year by 30%, which the factory is actually saying might be a bit difficult with the amount of staff they've got on. But that means that they've got the components for those units, even if they don't have the staff to put them together. But even conservatively, we're looking at 400 to 500 new BMP3s in 2023.
Personally, I see a few problems for the Russians there. First of all, they haven't adequately mobilized their economy, meaning that they haven't focused on, say, building new factories for this war. They have just maxed out current production. They haven't converted any factories that are building other things like cars or trucks to, say, building BMPs. They have reactivated definitely their repair plants and tried to refurbish as much equipment as they can. But when it comes to constructing new equipment, sure, they've ramped up production, but in that I think it just slows the bleeding from the really large reserves that they have and had and are utilizing still. But those numbers are still going down, and at some point they would have to bite the bullet and actually mobilize the economy and start truly building at scale, at which point the economic ramifications of this war would be not just really bad for a few decades, it would be really bad for 40 years after. And I mean, maybe they do it, but I've also seen this procrastination with also mobilization. There are some talks, I've seen people saying, oh, maybe they'll mobilize another 500,000 men. Maybe, who knows? But I haven't seen them be all that nervous about it. They haven't been oh yeah, let's mobilize. I feel like they'll be forced by some big embarrassment to mobilize. If the front is staying mostly stable, I don't think they will bite the bullet on that. They will start again throwing in whoever the fuck. Maybe from the strategic missile forces again.
We'll see. The fact that that Politico story that came out recently about the large purchase of body armor is
I saw that. That's the one.
That was obviously something that was leaked by the intelligence agencies to Politico. So that's something that the US government is at least worried about. Plus, there was that gunpowder story a month ago or so about how there was a massive amount of gunpowder transferred to one of the Russian ammunition factories from China. I would say that this conscription law, if they're not going to do another mobilization, this conscription law means that they can start to do a shadow mobilization, or they can start to call up, because Putin is a product of the Chechen wars. He remembered that Yeltsin's issue was that he would send in 18 and 19-year-old kids to die in Chechnya, and that was where his political problems came from. The fact that they're moving to conscription for 18 to 30 means that they're probably going to start to do they're going to be a lot more less reserved about sending conscripts into Ukraine. And I would say that Putin is he's very legally minded. He doesn't like to do anything without legally putting it through, at least in Russian political system. The fact that they are moving forward this mobilization, this new conscription law, means they probably want to put it to use. The plans that they've released call for a larger military, which means that they probably do need to do enough mobilization. I would say that my impression is that they're trying to put together these, they were talking about in June, a new tank army, a new combined arms army, and a new army corps. That were 60% filled out with equipment and already filled out with personnel. My impression is that while the factories, they aren't building new factories, those old Soviet factories do have a lot of room to expand production from where it was pre-war. And I don't believe that they'll struggle to mobilize again like they did the first time.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
With the mobilization mobilization the first time around, what was interesting that is that a lot was said, and a lot of people like kind of didn't take it serious, and they were like, oh, fucking whatever, rusty rifles, fucking calling up everyone who's like over 70 and half blind. Like, the moment I saw it, I'm like, okay, this is clearly like you have this old car and you're trying to kick it into gear, right? It's like grinding its transmission a bit because it hasn't done this in a while. Like, you're getting the old guy to just fucking do some old tricks he knew, and in my opinion, it just looked like there were a lot of kinks in the system. But we saw just that. Like, we mostly saw like the most embarrassing shit that came out of the mobilization. But most of it just kind of went whatever. Like, there wasn't massive resistance to the mobilization. A lot of people like expected. There was some like fuck. Like, we have to wait. Give me a second. I'm getting some noise.
No, that's all good. No, that's something that was... I think even the Russian political leadership were surprised how little political resistance there was to mobilization.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and they found the equipment, like, for that one. They definitely gave them assault rifles. They didn't give them potatoes to throw.
I think the biggest problem for them was the fact that the Russian mobilization system at the time was still based by region. And a lot of the regions had massive problems in how they equipped those units. They've centralised that all now. They've also computerised all the mobilisation records. One of the problems they had the first time was that they were mobilising people for roles that they hadn't trained for. So I remember there was a tanker who was mobilised as an artilleryman, just because they didn't have the records to send people where they should have gone. So I think the next one will be a lot less of a struggle. Again, if the Russians can't achieve anything more than a stalemate with the current force structure they've got, they can probably achieve minor gains if all things remain in equal, but they won't be able to launch. You can't launch a major offensive when you're outnumbered. It just doesn't work.
I mean, I agree there. I don't think that they can actually go on any major offensive without mobilizing. I feel like, at worst, this looks like a stalemate if things continue in this way. If the Russians mobilize again, when before their first mobilization, what I kept saying is that that's the ace up their sleeves, their ability to further mobilize. And that without that, this war looks like a stalemate. I have been worrying that this war would end up like a stalemate for months now. But yeah, I agree. I don't think they can launch an offensive in their current state. I hope that the Ukrainians are able to just, like, I don't know, do something to, like, convince the very stringent, like, Western allies to maybe send more shit. And truly commit.
It's coming to the point where there isn't a huge amount of stuff that can still be sent. The United Kingdom is pretty much tapped out. Germany is pretty much tapped out. A lot of the old Soviet stuff has all been used up. They can do some things like try to convince Cyprus to send their T-80s and BMP-3s and that sort of around the edges stuff, but there's no remaining big chunk of equipment that's out there ready for the Ukrainians to take. And people talk about the lack of Russian mobilization, but there has been it's been very lethargic on the West as well. I still think shell production is still, the Germans are down to very minimum amount of shells that they can supply. The last shipment they sent to the Ukrainians was something like 1,300.
Jesus.
Which is probably all new production if they're down to 20,000.
What are the French doing? What are the French doing? Do they not have shit to send? Or do they all have it in, like, proprietary... whatever the fuck?
I think the French military is a bit... they're sending their old equipment, but the new stuff that they can send, it's all specialist stuff. So they've got the Caesars, which are very effective, probably one of the best systems in the war. But that factory is still working normal hours, and they're mostly sending old production. It's not new production.
The Eastern Europeans have picked up the slack with munitions production, keeping the Soviet guns of the Ukrainian military firing. They have hired a lot of workers in Bulgaria, in Romania. A lot of the Eastern Bloc countries are producing artillery shells. The Korean stopgap, we've been saying they sent like 500,000 shells to the Americans. But they won't sacrifice their combat readiness for anything. So I don't expect them to give much more than they can actually spare. Cyprus is interesting, but the whole triangle, Cyprus, Greece, and Turkey, is just like a sad story for NATO. Greece and Turkey are, like, next to the US, are probably the most militarized countries in NATO, and they're just pointed at each other. Like, can you imagine the Americans decide to send, like, 200 Abrams to each in exchange for, like, I don't know, Greece sending 500 Leopard 1s to Ukraine, because we have them. We have 500 Leopard 1s, and they're never gonna do anything. They're just chilling. It's not like you can fight an armored war in Greece. Like, you've seen what it looks like. Like, what are you gonna push the leopards through? Like, mountain roads? Fucking goat trails? What the fuck are we doing with that many tanks? And same with the Turks. The Turks, they are. It's harder for them to send modern equipment. They have Leopard 1s, I think, right? Don't they have also around 3 or 4?
It's M60s that they're mostly got.
They have a lot of M60s, yeah, because we have M60s as well. We have 400 M48 A5s and 100 or 200 M60s. But we don't, those are like, we want to replace those. The thing is, we're never gonna, it's not gonna happen at current, like, equipment production rates. But, like, that's the thing, like, the Americans have the tanks. If they sent them to the, the Western allies that don't need to learn in a hurry. Greece doesn't need to learn how to operate, like, Abrams tanks in a hurry. But we don't have Abrams tanks right now. We have Leopard 2s. We went for the Germans. And those we want to modernize. But I think that the Greek government would happily take that kind of trade. Like 100, 200 Abrams for all our Leopard 1s, or all our... I wouldn't recommend sending like M48s and M60s to Ukraine. I feel like that would be just way too embarrassing.
They're sending chieftains, so M60 is much better than a fucking chieftain, I'll say that.
They are? They're sending chieftains?
Yes.
Who's sending chieftains? The British?
I think they're buying them from the Georgians, apparently. There was one...
Oh, Jesus, man.
I mean, for God's sake, in the Iraq-Iran war, they were getting clapped by T-62, so it's... I mean, the Georgians have modernized the powertrain, the engine, which is the biggest issue with them, but... Yeah, it's without a major... I mean, I don't know. The most recent U.S. assistance package was replacing the Bradleys that are lost with Strikers, which is a big downgrade for those sort of mechanized brigades. So I don't understand. It seems like, I don't know if it's a political issue for Biden in that he doesn't want to ask for more funding, or that that's all that they've got in reserve, which seems unlikely to me.
They have a lot of shit. I don't really understand why they aren't sending more. I mean, I guess...
There's stuff, they've probably got stuff in storage that's not ready to be sent. So maybe they just haven't done the contracts to get that stuff repaired, but it doesn't look like there's been much movement there either. So it doesn't look like a lot of countries are doing their due diligence to make sure that Ukraine can be supplied in a longer conflict.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're being kind of sluggish, like on all fronts.
So actually, we have sort of two questions, right? you saw in the YouTube chat is wondering, what's the biggest reason for Western hesitation to sending more equipment? Is wondering about if the supplies are limited. On the U.S.'s end, the answer is obviously no. We're just dumb. Um, but what do you guys think about for Eastern, Western European, and I guess the other U.S. partner nation stock?
Western countries, it's simply that they don't have the stock. I mean, Germany, it's sort of a meme about Germany, about how they would have to uh, go through the entire army to outfit a battalion of working mechanized units. Um, it's just the fact is the peace dividend meant that all these militaries were hollowed out. They don't have that sort of a lot of the European defence countries do a lot of boutique production. I know from personal sources that Rheinmetall is doing a lot of work to try to bring old equipment up to standard, but it's hard to do that and service these new contracts. It's just a matter of the European defence industry is just very small. It's not employing as many people as it should. The European companies are asking for long-term contracts to guarantee this increase in production, and the European governments aren't willing to spend the money. They'll buy the equipment, but they won't invest for that long-term production because they think as soon as the war's over, they plan to go back to where they were.
Yeah, no, largely agree. And to add again with Turkey and Greece, Turkey has its own production, but it's keeping it for itself because it's engaged everywhere. And Greece doesn't really produce that much stuff. It's boutique for us as well. And like Greece is just too worried about Turkey to send anything major, and it's also very politically difficult to send any equipment when Greece, out of all the countries in NATO, is one of the most skeptical towards NATO, and it has been like that for a long time. Not only because of like Yugoslavia, Greece was not a fan of the NATO bombings, and also there's the fact that basically the entire Greek left is like vehemently anti-NATO. And okay, them I can't blame because they got fucking bombed by NATO. But like other left wingers, I don't understand. It's like whatever. Who do you like? Like Russia? It's not even the Soviets. Like get over it. Just let it go. It's fine. Whatever. Fucking it's NATO. I don't care. Like just move on with your life. But no, Greece can't send for political reasons mostly, and because we don't have production. Turkey can't send because it's engaged everywhere, and their pride would be hurt if they had like one less tank to show in a parade or something. And the rest of the European defense industry is just like kind of twiddling their thumbs. They like the increases in production are kind of pathetic. I think the last great hope is the U.S. And their really vast stockpiles of like vehicles. But I think that the U.S. is also considering the fact that the one thing that it can't do from afar and as a partner is win the air war. It's not an easy thing to do without like you can't just give planes to the Ukrainians and tell them just win against the Russian Air Force. All we can do is keep it at bay and keep it out of the equation as much as possible.
I think the F-16, the F-16 transfer, its main benefit will be cutting down SAM usage by engaging those cruise missiles. I don't see even this is a very to be honest, I don't think it's likely that they'll get more than 100 F-16s just because we heard all the promises about the Leopard 2s, and then when it came time for countries to send them, they were a lot more conservative with the numbers.
How many did they send in the end? Like 40, 50?
Yeah, something like that. It was a lot less than what people were promising before it was approved. I think that the main advantage will be to cut down SAM usage and try to conserve that very low production of missiles. It might, around the edges, make the Russians a bit more conservative about using those glide bombs. But to be honest, the F-16 blocks that they're talking about about sending aren't that much better than those upgraded MiG-29s. So I don't think it's going to be a major quality advantage over the old stuff.
But the SAM usage thing is like a truly scary part. Like in my view, I feel like the SAM coverage has been kind of decreasing steadily in all of the periphery of Ukraine. Like in Odessa, the air defense did next to nothing.
Yeah. Odessa, I noticed that there seemed to, on the second or third day, they started to use what I suspect were very unrefurbished S-300 rounds that were a lot less effective than what they used to have. But I think the Soviet SAM stockpile is almost completely out, and I don't think that even if the Western's supplied were 100% more effective, there just isn't that stockpile of rounds to maintain the sort of fire rates that they were keeping during 2022.
Sorry to cut you off there. For all of our viewers, that'll be slide 9 on the status of forces for the live stream page. You can see the number of SAMs Ukraine had left in February, and it was not great. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Go ahead.
And the fact is, from what we can see, is that the Russian stockpile of cruise missiles and Iranian drones isn't decreasing, it's increasing. I think the Ukrainian government said that there was a 50% increase in production, which might be an overestimation or might be an underestimation, we're not too sure. It's not going to, there's not going to be a point where the Russians run out, is my point. And it seems like there will be a point when the Ukrainians do. We'll
honestly,
see
I think that we can confidently say that they could fire Saheds forever. What is effectively forever for this war?
It's basically
they can produce them. They're really cheap, really easy to produce. Not any special components on them that are really hard to find. They're just gonna keep making them, and we have steadily seen that they keep using them over and over and over. They have used way more Shahed drones than what Iran supplied. It's no longer Iran supplying them; it's them building them and just sending them in droves.
I think there was actually a Ukrainian report that they did find one of the new ones was upgraded with Glosnaz guidance, so that the Russians could change the routes as after it had been launched, which was a big capacity increase. It's stuff like that that's going to make it harder for them to sort of build those sort of the SAM nets to make sure that they can sort of try to knock them out before they come in, which of course will increase the amount of ammunition that they're going to be using to try to knock them down, which is again another problem. The Storm, the cruise missiles that the Ukrainians have been supplied, I don't think they got the Tauruses from the Germans. I'm correct in that.
As far as I'm aware, they've been using them pretty well.
No,
air to ground. Yeah, you're right. Of checking Oryx, only Scalp, Storm Shadow, and various US PGMs plus MAMs from Turkey.
So I think the stockpile for the Storm Shadows and the Scalps from the British and the French, they're effective, but they're a very limited resource. I don't know if there's a major. Once they're used up, I don't think there's going to be a constant supply that they can keep using. I think that's
Who's even making ballistic missiles? Who?
Iran.
I think even. Correct me, you'll probably know more, James. The ATCOMs, it's mostly refurbishments rather than new production, isn't it?
I'm not even sure if you could say they're refurbishments per se. I think they sort of just extant stock, right? There is a substantial procurement line, but it's not that robust relative to Ukraine's requirements.
And there's a China contingency, which is the big hold up on the US's judgment. They don't want to burn through all their supplies while they're looking at a Pacific War in the next 10 years.
It's sort of a general trend here, right? We're not. The U.S. is concerned about China, and Europe is not sort of reaching the bar of defense procurement as it was desired to be by NATO's lofty requirements, right? So how does the ramp up square with Ukraine's requirements for the war against Russia? Actually, I'm gonna throw that into the word and step back for a second.
Yeah, I feel like they've like completely undershot and half baked it. Like, I mean, you know how they fucking are. Like all the time, it's like you need to do something, and they'll just give you like the half of the compromise. Like, you can't do that though in a war. Like the lines cut thin. Like you need to overdo it. That's the name of the game in a war like this. You can't just like say, hey, they're gonna have to make do. It's like, dude, no. If you tell them to make do, they will make do by not attacking. Like that's as simple as that. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've do you think we've wasted like too much energy on like stuff like ATACMS? Because a lot of people have been doing it over and over and over. And I don't feel like even if they got like 15 missiles, it wouldn't really make a gigantic difference.
I mean, the Russians, not the Russians, the Ukrainians had short-range ballistic missiles. They were effectively used before they ran out. But I don't see it as a massive capability upgrade. They'll still be able to they'll be able to strike a few new targets, but the Russians can engage them. It's not like it's an unknown capacity. I think the Storm Shadows are probably a little bit more effective in that regard, just because they are a bit more stealthy. I would say that the cluster munition stockpile, it's the decision to send cluster rounds is probably a bigger win for the Ukrainians than getting ATACMS, just because.
Yes, because the Americans have a lot of them, even if they're not that great. The Americans have like 4 million cluster munitions.
Well, yeah, I would say, yeah, it's quite a lot. There's a lot of duds, unfortunately, because they are quite old, but it keeps them in the fight. The US artillery production hasn't gone up the way the US government hoped. Hopefully, this purchase of dynamite from Japan will allow them to get that boost. But I'm a little bit skeptical that it'll still be enough to meet the Ukrainians' needs. But they've bought themselves time. I don't think the cluster munitions will be that much more effective compared to standard rounds, particularly against fortifications. But it keeps them firing at least, which is the most important thing.
You know what? I feel like a lot of the Western approach has been buying time without an overall plan and saying, okay, we'll figure it out later. And then when the later comes over, says, okay, we'll just buy more time. And the whole plan is like a hopeless circle. It's just like, okay, we just gotta buy more time. Like, how are you doing, son? Just buying a little more time. You know the memes, like just one more week.
Yeah.
Like I just gotta get through this week. Like I feel like we are reactive. Like they're chasing after like the war more like than being proactive. Actually, like sitting their asses down and
thinking things
actually
through.
focusing on the production.
Yeah. I think the most dangerous time for the Russians was in September to November last year. That was a time when, if there was enough Western support, the Ukrainians might have even been able to achieve win the war in that period. I think one of the biggest missed opportunities was the fact that the Russians were able to withdraw from Chernihiv without being engaged, and that entire grouping, which was probably one of the most veteran forces that they had, was able to be redeployed on the front. If they had lost that because, say, a dam had been damaged somehow, or the bridge had suffered a little bit more damage, then the Russians would have been very hard for them to continue the war. But
you know, like they drove over the bridge, even when they drove over it. They said, okay, if it fails, it fails, and they drove over it. Same with the dam. Like they're like, okay, if it fails, it fails, and it didn't. Like they just kind of drove over it.
Yeah, they were broadcasting the fact that they were going to withdraw, and I think that they managed to psych out the Ukrainians a bit who thought that it was a trap, and they were able to withdraw without even coming under fire on the bridges. They were pulling out an entire, it was like 15,000 men.
Yeah,
20,000,
something like that, 15, 20,000, something like that. That was Vikings doing, right? Like, which
I think Surovic, I hope for the Ukrainian sake that he's actually been arrested, because
that shit is so funny, man.
Yeah,
like he got the strays, like this whole like clown show that was the fucking like a Prigozhin affair, and fucking Surovic catches the strays. It's like, what the fuck am I? Why me? I'm the only one who did something right here. Why am I catching the strays? You know, like fuck.
The fucking guy who launched the coup is having tea with Lukashenko and Belarus, but no, his strategy over the winter, which was shorten the lines, waste as much of Ukrainian manpower in Bakhmut as possible by losing mostly convicts and Wagner, which and giving that time for those mobilized formations to cement themselves, meant that the Russians got past what was the most dangerous period of the war for them.
And a lot of the Mobics learned under fire, basically. Like, they gave them next to no training, put them in the line and said, okay, you're either going to learn or die. Like, it's simple as. A lot of them died, but, like, people way overestimated what the winter would do to the Mobics and what the fighting would do to the Mobics. Like, the difference between a soldier that has received 3 days training and 30 days training and maybe 2 months training is very small when they're sitting in a trench. Really, it saves you from doing really stupid shit if you've got those 1 or 2 months training. But in all fairness, like, the people who do the real stupid shit are gonna get killed really quickly. So the others are gonna they're gonna watch and learn. Really, like. I remember I saw some videos of like really drunk Mobics like basically walking out like in the middle of fields and shit and getting shot. But apart from that, like, it wasn't a widespread panic or like a break or anything else. Like, they may as well be more scared of their superiors than the Ukrainians.
I think they made sure, particularly in Kharkiv, Luhansk Kharkiv front is where they sent a lot of the mobilized forces, where the fighting was a bit less intense. So they had that time to... After your first couple engagements, the difference between a conscript and a volunteer is very little. They're a little bit... Motivation makes a big difference on the offence, but on the defence, everyone wants to live. So it's... I think there was a lot of hope that the mobilised forces would collapse, particularly during this offensive, and they're actually... The fact that the 58th Army is still contesting those forward positions where they're not even that well fortified means that was probably pretty vain.
Something that... this is a bit of a meme, but do you remember the guy, what's his name, who said that 100,000 would freeze to death?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Who was it? Theiner? Or O'Brien? Which one? One of those two.
It was
Doesn't matter. They may as well be interchangeable of the bad taste. I wouldn't give them the time of day. But fuck.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of... people took the fact... when Russia launched these thunder runs at the start of the war, they took the fact that the Ukrainians were able to engage those supply lines, and that the Russians at the front weren't receiving enough supplies, and the fact that the Russians couldn't do logistics when the front line was stable. I mean, you don't fire 60,000 artillery rounds a day without having a pretty robust logistics system.
It's some of those myths that stuck in from the early war, like, oh, they don't have logistics. How don't they have logistics? How haven't they lost yet? Like, if they didn't have logistics, they should have starved a while ago. Like, what's something isn't good in the sauce here, friend. Like, How the other one I remember from the beginning of the war. That one particularly infuriated me. The Russians are out of trucks. Do you remember that meme?
Yeah.
The Russians are out of trucks. I said, how the fuck are they out of trucks? There's 5 million trucks in Russia. How many have they destroyed in the space of like 1 month? Maybe 400. How would they run out of trucks? They have a truck industry. They make 300,000 trucks a year. How the fuck would they run out of trucks? That is the most insane thing I have ever heard. And yet, people who supposedly have a reputation upheld that and looked people in the eyes and said, yes, look at me, the Russians don't have trucks. No, they didn't have coordination, and they got their supply lines shelled, and that cost them, they ran out of fuel outside of fucking Kyiv. It was really funny, but they never ran out of trucks. Come on.
Yeah, there's a lot of hopes that are still based on the early war. The Russians went in with a very bad plan, and they didn't. There's a reason why the FSB suffered most of the firings after the war, after that initial period, rather than the military itself, just because they were so involved in coming up with this plan that said, don't worry about it, just do it like Hungary in the 50s. Ukrainians will stay in base. All our collaborators will make sure that everyone welcomes you with open arms. I think they ended up sending more police in the first couple of waves than they did with the National Guard sort of riot police than actual infantry, which is ridiculous. But anyway, we'll get off the early topic of the war because that's been discussed to death by other people. What do you guys think about this sort of Kharkiv offensive that's going on in the north? The Russians are launching.
I'm gonna frame it into picture. Actually, we have Baroza.
Man, let me help. Which one? Okay, I'm Greek, so I can pronounce them better. What are you talking about?
Borova.
Borova? Where? Are they? You say? You say they're aiming at Borova.
Yeah. There's a large. Actually, there's even the TDF.
It's that ridge line with a bunch of villages on it that they seem to be aiming for. If they take that ridge line, they've got sort of firing positions all the way to the Oskil River, which they either could be aiming for entrenching on the Oskil, sort of like a new defensive position, and taking Luhansk, or if they are aiming to secure bridgeheads across that for future offensives. That means that they're looking. That would say to me that they're still planning major actions. If they just go into the river itself, then I would say that it's likely that the Russian government has decided that that's where the line's going to be for the armistice.
So, I think a couple of things here. First of all, I don't think they're going to try to establish bridgeheads over the Oskil River for a couple of reasons. First of all, if they really wanted to go on an offensive into Kharkiv proper, they would use Russia. They have a really big bridgehead. It's called Russia. It's around the river. So they would use that if they wanted to restart that direction. And I think that it's kind of an offensive of opportunity. They have a slight superiority, probably in manpower in the area. They had some good units that were fairly well rested there. So they said, okay, let's try to push here since the Ukrainians are busy with other shit. And they saw that, okay, they were achieving some success. But I don't know if they have a lot of shit to commit to make it to Borova. But honestly, there isn't anything great for the Ukrainians to defend ahead of Borova. It's only that really ridge line that has some trees and like the river itself. The what's it called?
Oskil?
Not the Oskil. The other river.
Oh fuck.
The Zerabets. So there's the Zerabets River. But after that ridge that has the little trees, reservoirs, and little downs, it's really flat. Like the road to Borova is flat. Like all that area is flat, and if you have artillery basically looking over that area, it's not the best for defending it. So the Ukrainians may decide to pull back and try to defend a bridgehead around Kupiansk. They may try to pull back and defend a bridgehead around Liman. I don't think they're gonna try to hold on to places like Borova because it's just so open there. It's just like the way I see it. But their reservoir is full, so I don't think they're gonna be worried about the Russians crossing it. So they will focus on the crossable directions like Kupiansk and Liman. And if it does prove like if they do see that they can't really stop the Russians on those ridges, I think they're just gonna pull back and try more defensible positions because it's not like anything of much value is over there. The Svatove offensive has ground to a halt now for many months. It's not like it's not there. It's not like just out of reach. And there's also a massive defensive line, a massive Russian defensive line on Svatove. So I don't really see the Ukrainians just being too attached to this central area between Borova and what's the other one?
Kupiansk?
I'm trying to read the very complicated ones.
That's probably one of my biggest irritations with. There's so many villages that have the same name. It's
Kruchjalkivka, Kolishivacha. Yeah, it's funny. Some of them I can read very easily. Others I struggle with a bit. Petropavlivka. Yeah, a lot of them are easy, but others aren't.
No, I think it'll be interesting to see what sort of reserves the Ukrainians pull up for that area. I know from video that I've seen, there are quite a number of Storm Z convict units that the Russians have there, which are their main assault units now, with varying degrees of capability. But I believe that the Russian MOD has actually taken the Wagner commander who was in charge of their convict program and put them in charge of theirs. So they might. I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Mariupol guy.
Yeah.
Ooh. So what do you guys think of sort of a sequential operation, right? The Russian forces push up to the Oskol, right? And that was the defensive line that was presumably easy to hold until they fumbled the line.
Yeah, they fumbled hard there. They didn't have anybody to put behind it. I said that they might pull out everybody from the north and put them behind, but they did that, and they realized, oh shit, we actually the only people we had like around Veliki Burluk and all of the north was like 5,000 guys. Actually, it's not enough to hold it, so they had to pull back to Svatova and just throw in the Mobics and hoped and prayed that they would hold. And they did, but they lost that very nicely defensible line, and they ended up on the Zerebets, which it's not exactly a mighty river. The Oskil is a very pretty defensive line. And if you combine it with the Seversky Donets, that's also there, so around Dibrova, Stary Garavan, they connect, and yeah, they make for a good defensive line that's close to Izium. But yeah, I think they might try to regain that. That's what I think their goal is. Try maybe cut it in two and focus them down separately, and then go for Liman when it's like real attack hours. But they would have to bring up forces for Liman. Liman isn't easy. It's like a fairly big town, and we've seen that people are fight for it. Like somehow Liman has seen, like as a small town, has seen some like of the harshest and quickest fighting. This town has changed hands like twice, but it's done so really brutally. Like in both times, like the Ukrainians basically encircled it. The Russians, when they were attacking Liman, they blew it to bits, man. What they did is they took all the little villages in a semicircle, put TOS ones there, and just demolished all of Liman, and then pushed in. I remember that, who was it, like Tom Scott or some other journalists. I don't remember. I don't know if Tom Scott is the right name, but there were a few Aussie journalists in Slavyansk, and they were like, oh fuck, we can hear the fighting in Liman from that far away. We can see the smokestacks, the smoke clouds coming from Liman. Wait, let me find the guy that I'm thinking about.
So what do you guys think of the possibility of if the Russians are in fact concentrating maybe not 100,000 guys on this one
Not
area
much. Not much.
If they push up to the Oskil, right, wouldn't that free up like say 20,000 guys to hold the river, 40 to 50,000 guys to do other things, maybe another offensive in the north or another offensive down towards Kharkiv?
It would free up guys, but you know where they would put them? They would put them in Donetsk. Trust. They would try to maybe improve their line in Bakhmut and try to take Siversk. Go that step by step. Unless they mobilize, they won't do any new fronts. I don't think. Even if they reduce the number.
I think these new formations they're putting together are probably their bigger offensive formations. So once they come in, they'll be, if they are putting together, but it depends on how much you trust the Russian military.
Depends on who you ask.
Reports.
Everything.
But I don't think they'll go into Donetsk because I think even the Russian general staff don't see that as a viable option. It's too costly. They were happy to spend a lot of Wagner resources in Bakhmut, but they haven't seemed to. Even once they took it, they never really threw their own forces in to support them. I don't think they see it as a viable option for the long term, just because the amount of defences. I mean, how long have they been kicking their heads against, how do you say it, Markina and Adviark? Is that how you say it? Or am I pronouncing that incorrectly?
Wait, what are we talking about?
Yeah, in the south near Donetsk.
Oh, in the south.
In Avdivka. That's the...
In the suburb of Donetsk, yeah.
Yeah, Avdivka is a big stronghold there. But, like, the thing is with Avdivka, like, it's in a semicircle. Like, if they had, like, 20,000, 30,000 men fresh to throw in, they could probably, like, try and cut it off. Like, but it would still be a lot of losses because that area, that area is fortified. That area is so strongly fortified. But then again, like the Russian pincer has kind of done the thing where it stretched itself, figured out that it doesn't have enough guys to complete it, and just sat there. Just sat there staring. Like, they're having a staring contest right now, like across the lines, like, will you move? No, we won't. Will you move? No, we won't. Like, that's the kind of situation that's in Avdivka, and I understand. Because nobody wants to attack Avdivka. Like, that's like guaranteed death. Like, it's not like the we're shits and giggles, let's go on the offensive in in the direction of Borova. It's, oh no, it's Avdivka, motherfucker, you're gonna die here. Like, it's not.
Yeah, I think my understanding of their strategy is that if they're looking for a stalemate and just to even up the lines for the eventual stalemate, they might go into Donetsk in Donbass where it's heavily fortified, but they want to even it out a bit. If they're still looking to achieve major strategic effects, which, considering there was that report that the US was offering Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, and referendums in the other conquered oblasts, and yet Putin wasn't answering them at all. It seems that they still feel that they can win this war outright. So I would suspect that my suspicion is that Kharkiv is probably the best chance they have to get around those sort of massive, heavy fortifications and get some manoeuvre going. But they need more men to do so, so I don't see a massive chance of that before another mobilization.
Yeah, no, if you asked me, like, hey, give the Russians 200,000 men, how could they end this war? Like 300,000 men, some crazy number, and all of them are like well trained, like let's say they're all like this fantasy universe where like Russia assembles this kind of force and it's competently led and they have a plan and like they're gonna go on the offensive. I would say, sure, maybe you could try and like encircle Kharkiv and take it, but why even do that? Like you could try going slightly northwest of Kharkiv and using the road network there, which is a pretty decent road network, to go for Potlava, and then try to reach Kremenchuk. Because it doesn't matter how well you defend everything, right? In Donetsk, in Luhansk, in Kharkiv, if you're able to cut off, if you reach the Dnipro anywhere north and west of it and blow up the bridges, what's going to happen to those troops? How are they going to be supplied?
That's true. I don't think that they have that sort of. I think they'll be a bit once bitten, twice shy about those sort of thunder runs.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I said fantasy universe when they have a new army. I think that going for Kharkiv is more achievable if they actually go through mobilizations and like attempt again. It would be painful, but I think they could probably manage it if the Ukrainians don't shift around stuff and give up on their offensive ambitions.
It would be another 6 months before another mobilization provides an effective force. But if they continue the rate of production, then they are going above losses at the moment, from my impression. The fact that they are getting a lot of that is refurbishment, so I don't know how long they can maintain that. But the fact Soviets had the largest military-industrial complex in history. There's a lot of stockpiles they can reach into. The fact that we're not seeing a lot of I don't think there's been a massive number of T-72s, or there was a great graph showing equipment losses by type of tank. The fact that T-72 losses had dropped so much compared to T-80 losses and T-62s, despite the fact that we know that a lot of those are going through factory repairs at the moment. And there is that preference for the Russian military to keep new equipment for new formations compared to, from what we saw from 3rd Army Corps prior to the Kharkiv offensive, where they were getting the new equipment and the units on the front were getting quickly refurbished stuff.
Man, they got the short end of the stick, the 3rd Army Corps. Holy fuck. They drew short. They were like just ready, the good old boys, all the big Z patriots ready to go on the offensive. And you say, okay, there's been a breakthrough, guys, so just send your light shit, whatever can reach Kupiansk first. You send your light shit. Yeah, and you send your light shit, and oh no, actually, we've just run into the fucking, the 4th Tank Brigade. Oh no, this is bad. They got like so badly spent. We saw the videos of them going in, and the same afternoon, the videos of them leaving Kupiansk. That was so embarrassing. Holy shit.
Yeah, it was. But I don't think that the Russian strategy has changed. They're still trying to build up new offensive formations. It's slow. But I think that they are still trying to stick with that plan with new offensive formations with new equipment. There is still growth potential in the industry as well, even with the fact that they've lost so much stuff. I know during the earlier decades, state orders, they were buying a lot more helicopters and a lot more jets than they are producing at the moment. The loss of the South Korean connection, because South Korea was a big supporter for the Russian defense industry, has slowed that down quite a bit, particularly after Crimea. But I think that the Chinese do have the components to supply them if they're willing to sell them. So it's a lot of the stuff that the Russians have lost, they do have the capacity to replace and even go above where they were pre-war. So I don't think that's my big worry about the attrition strategy, is that now that the Russians have the political will to mobilize and the defense industry is working, if not as effectively as it could, but it's still working much more effectively than it was at the start of the war. I don't think that attrition strategy is going to be as successful long term as it was during last year prior to mobilization.
Yeah, I will agree that. I mean, I won't say that they are above replacement. I don't think so. I think they've definitely
For certain pieces. I mean,
perhaps artillery. They have the very big artillery parts. They have the maybe with tanks they're speeding up. With BMPs they're speeding up. But I don't think that they're still digging into stockpiles. It's just that now those stockpiles look much bigger because with new stuff being produced and them supplementing what they had before, more refurbishments, it just looks like, and also the rate of loss is like kind of falling with a lot of equipment. Like it's not like the early war. We don't see like farmers hauling T-72B3s. Like we don't see that anymore. It's a slower war, and the Russians have caught their breath, and they can look at their options and say, okay, we can do this, we can do that. We have some time. Our stockpiles will give us time. Maybe we can mobilize further. Let's see how this goes. Let's see how this Ukrainian offensive goes. I feel like they're just kind of weighing their options at the moment, and I think that eventually, like if they don't want to give up this war, they will be forced to commit even further, like actually mobilize the economy, maybe convert factories or build more, expand the existing ones as much as possible. The fact that also those factories are like out of Ukraine's reach is also very like difficult to. It's a hard pill to swallow. Like you can't like it's not possible really to strike anything behind the Urals. Like I don't see that as a real possibility at the moment. So I don't know. I feel like the Russians do have the capacity to continue this war. They definitely have the potential to.
And I think that it's becoming pretty clear from leaks that are coming out that a lot of people in the US government are looking for negotiations at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's
embarrassing, man. I can't.
Yes, it is.
I don't like that as an idea. Like, how the fuck do you see like Russia just like drunkenly stumbling over their war and saying, you know what, we're tapping out. Like, come on, man.
Damn
like, follow your sword a little bit, Jesus. God damn it.
I don't think it's going to be successful just because I don't think that they can offer. The only thing they could offer, Zelensky won't accept not getting NATO membership because war.
True.
To begin with, and politically he can't accept loss of territories, which is the only thing the US can offer Russia. So I think the war's going to go on, but I think that they're going to try to pressure Zelensky with equipment.
I mean, ultimately, they hold the trump card over Zelensky. Even if Zelensky wants to continue the war, like forever, to regain those territories, he could do that. Maybe the Ukrainian army could try that, but in the end, the artillery ammunition comes from the West. They hold all the power. They could, if they stop artillery like the ammunition deliveries, this war wouldn't last another 6 months. Like, it would be way too difficult for the Ukrainians to maintain like the level of artillery they're putting out right now. It would be really hard for them to replace. Like, if the Western if the Western allies cut off their equipment deliveries, it's not a question whether or not Russia could outlast Ukraine. It's a matter of fact. It's mathematical.
It would be South Vietnam, 1975.
Yeah.
Kind of, I guess.
Yeah.
Except kind of dumber.
Yeah, so that's I don't see the fact that they can if this offensive fails, I don't see the capacity to maintain the long war on the western side, unless there's a major breakthrough which is what my hope, that there's a breakthrough in the south. They can put that pressure on and try to force the Russians to terms. But I think the problem is that even if they did achieve that success, there would be a lot of pressure on Zelensky to keep going if he did achieve that success. So it's sort of a catch-22. Neither side is willing to make those negotiations go forward.
I mean, the thing is, like, any kind of negotiation will be real sour for Ukraine. Like, I feel like Zelensky doesn't politically survive any kind of negotiation of that sort. Any giving up of territory. Like, it would have to be really bad for them to say, okay, yes. Like, the Western allies would have to straight up go to Zelensky and say, okay, listen, you're either negotiating or, like, we're cutting off everything. I think that's the only circumstances under which Zelensky would even consider. Like,
and even then, I don't think Zelensky would survive that.
Yeah, he would. I don't think he would. But that's the thing. I don't think that Western governments care about Zelensky's political career. What they care about is how this war ends.
Yeah.
Like, what position are we in when the war ends? Like, I think that's the main thing they are concerned about. They want to save their own skin. Like, that's where they're fucking weasels of a lot of
So sort of, Jan has a good question. She sort of asked, or he sort of asked. Sorry, clarify your pronouns in the comment. Y'all are making it sound like if this offensive fails, the war is over.
It's not over. It's just there's not going to be another offensive with this level of equipment transfer. There just isn't. There isn't. They've gone through the Soviet bloc equipment.
Got you, Bean.
This is all the spare modern Western equipment. There's spare older Western equipment, the Leopard 1s, the Chieftains, the Challenger 1s. British can't produce new artillery systems. I think the Poles have sold off a lot of their equipment. They're using that money to buy new equipment. I don't think the South Koreans will agree to transfer that to Ukraine.
The Poles basically gave up their entire army stockpile to Ukraine. Basically,
exactly.
They gave it. And the Poles are the ones who invested.
Well, to be fair, they got the EU to fund the modernization of their entire military, so I don't think they were.
They're rich. The Poles are rich.
Yeah, they I think it's not do or die because the Russians will still struggle to launch offensives just with the level of fortifications and the manpower difference between the two sides. But I don't see there being another 12 brigades built up if this one fails. That's just my impression.
So I'll add to that a couple of things. I see this as like a light in the tunnel kind of moment. But if this offensive doesn't succeed, like the light goes so further back that you can't even see it. It's like, okay, we're sitting here, we're kind of in limbo. What happens now? We don't know. We'll need to rely on the Western allies to get over a lot of hang-ups to actually supply Ukraine properly. And then there's the other thing. I would say that even if the offensive fails, I don't think that the Ukrainians will. I think they will realize that it's failing before it does, and I don't think they will overcommit. I don't think they will absolutely destroy those brigades, bashing their heads in the Russian lines. I feel like that if they get the idea that this isn't going anywhere, they'll cut their losses. I don't think they're gonna repeat I don't think that it's gonna be like Bakhmut. Personally, I just don't see it. That equipment is way too precious.
We'll see. It's just my fear is that Zelensky is getting a lot of pressure to speed up the offensive in the south. The way that these leaks are going to the media saying they're not trying hard enough, despite the fact that they're having some success with their attrition strategy in terms of artillery losses. It worries me, particularly with this story that came out today about look for the next 3 weeks where there's going to be a major push. Bakhmut as well. in charge up there, so I don't really. We'll see how he goes, but there is some. The Ukrainians still have the heights to the south and the village of. Again, my pronunciation is Kanishka, but there's reports today that they haven't succeeded in driving the Russians completely out of there, or the Russians have regained some room there. We'll see. I think both sides are now using cluster munitions in the area, which makes it a lot more difficult for the Ukrainians to bring up those light infantry units. But again, it's early days. I think in a week we'll get a little bit more knowledge of how we're going, and we don't quite know what the state of Russian reserves are. But it's
so
not
much
this
here, man. It's so difficult to be able to accurately tell anything. It feels like you're trying to solve a puzzle, and you get 3 pieces and a man yelling in your ear, and the thing is, so many people also push so much bullshit out that it's sometimes it's just hard to keep up with the amount of bullshit. So personally, what I would say is that yes, keep an eye on them. Don't tie up everything into a single action, whether it be this offensive or whatever other offensive action. It's this war will go on for a while. Even if this offensive fails, I believe that this war will continue for a while. And don't overreact to anything. I feel like a little bit of inertia and apathy will help with dealing with this war. Not apathy, but keeping your cool a little, because a lot of people have this this mentality is that oh, it's so over, we're so back, it's so over, we are so back. I'm tired of that. I feel like people need to just kind of settle down a little,
No, I get that. Sorry, I just had to step out. My fiance was leaving. So there's that old study that the Soviets did in the 1930s about industrial scale war between 2 peer powers, where every 6 months the side that can replace their army is the one that wins. I think that's proven true in this war. The Ukrainians had, for the first year of the war, the first 2 periods of the war, a much better capability to replace losses than the Russians did. We'll see what happens. I think that there won't be any major breakthroughs, at least in 2023. I think that 2024 is when we see where this war will end. And the Ukrainians have surprised the world again and again in this conflict. But I always, after the first 6 months, I always try to look at industry, because that's the way wars are won. And I think the West has really fumbled the ball in the way that they've been supplying the Ukrainians. That's going to cost a lot of Ukrainians their lives. And it's going to be a danger for us as we go into the future.
So this sort of dovetails into a question that's been stirring on my mind. What do you guys think? I guess 2 questions. Going forward, right? So the Kakhovka Dam or Kakhovka Reservoir is drying up. The Russians don't have that flank defended for shit. What do you guys think of the prospects of an offensive across the Kakhovka Reservoir? There was this.
I think.
Ooh, you can carry.
Go. I would say that if there is a breakthrough, I would not be surprised if there is a sufficient reserve to launch that sort of offensive across the river. I don't think that unless they achieve a breakthrough on the main line of defence, they will risk it, just because they can try these pinning operations like they had near Chenison, with the crossing there near the bridge. Launching an amphibious operation is the most dangerous thing you can do, and as long as the Russian reserves remain at least seem uncommitted, then it's not worth the risk. it would be too costly to fail.
I feel like there is the benefit of the drying reservoir is that the actual river has moved quite far from where the Russians are and has gotten way closer to where the Ukrainians are. So if they feel that it's dry enough, they maybe could set up pontoons to cross. But the thing is, like looking at the spots where they could do this, basically anywhere from Nova Kakhovka, where the dam is, all the way to Energodar, that place is a dead zone for like roads or supply networks. So it would be really hard, like once you reach that area, like then what, you'd have to push many kilometers till you find like a proper network. You'd have, like, basically I think that if this was to succeed, the Russians would have to panic a lot and have no reserves. It would have to be like a second Kharkiv, really. And I mean, I don't know, maybe I won't rule it out, but it's also the fact that even without the reservoir, it's a big river and it's hard to set up a pontoon. Isn't it still like 2 kilometers wide? Like without the reservoirs, 1 kilometer wide? I don't know how wide it is.
I'd say probably 300 to 700 meters.
Ah, okay, that's more doable, but still, like, you need multiple pontoons, right, to be connected with one another. I don't know where they'd find that kind of, like, bridging equipment or...
There was actually quite a big shipment of bridging equipment that was sighted moving north in Bulgaria, pre-offensive, so I think they do have quite a bit of it. Where that equipment has
maybe, yeah. I think that if they were gonna make that move, they would make it from Nikopol to Energodar. Like they would.
Yeah, they would try to seize the nuclear power plant, prevent the risk of a meltdown, and try to use that as a safe zone to bring troops across.
Yeah, no, agreed there. If they were gonna do it, that's where they're gonna do it. No other point. Like if you look at the line, like the rest of it is just useless territory. Like, even if you capture it, you can't do anything with it. But Energodar, like, provides a good anchor, a point to move shit across.
Without a breach in the main Russian defensive line, I don't think they'll be launching that attack.
Oh.
It's just too risky.
Yeah, I don't think they'll launch it unless they know it will succeed, and they won't know it succeeds unless, like, the Russians maybe commit too much or they get intelligence that would suggest that this is a sensible move. Because still they have to deal with the river, and it's something the Russians couldn't do. Like if they get bogged down in a big firefight and they have to move a lot of stuff over the river, over those pontoons, and the pontoons are getting targeted, they would basically have to do like what Russia did in Kherson, but without the bridges. Like I don't really think that the Ukrainians are thinking that this is the best idea, especially considering that there's no cover. That like if they did try to pull that off, like if they had to retreat, they would have to retreat across open ground with Russian artillery basically hounding them. Like in the case of like the Russians basically had the entire town of Kherson to hide in to prepare their evacuation. They had like buildings around the bridges. They had options, but the Ukrainians don't have options. If they go over it, it's going to be a few kilometers of completely flat, open ground, basically like a desert. It would be like I really don't like it. It makes me. It has the tingling senses like going off. I guess it's kind of like I don't know. I wouldn't do it. But maybe they would go for it.
We've got Rob Lee on Twitter talking about how that story from the New York Times about the offensive being launched is that the 10th Corps is going to be committed. So that is a pretty big chunk of units from that reserve force.
I guess we'll see, man. I mean, we've got I think at least another month and a half or two of campaigning before the rains start again. So.
Oh, actually, Rob Lee actually tweeted about an hour ago that UA is committing its guys to the talkback axis again. It's committing, I think, the 10th Corps. Yeah, that's.
Why the Tokmak axis? Fucking leave Tokmak to be. Go elsewhere. Like, Tokmak is so bad. Like, look at it. Like, look at the lines there. They're so thick. Why Tokmak, man? I get it. It's a very juicy target, but fuck, they know it. The Russians know it's a juicy target. Like, aim small, miss small, right? Like, fucking go for something else. A breakthrough's a breakthrough.
Yeah, I think it's Tatarogami. You guys know the Ukrainian officer, or reserve officer?
Yeah. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, one of the best people to follow on Twitter.
Agreed.
He mentioned that there was this sort of Soviet holdovers, the Soviet taught holdovers, I should say, that are very focused, hyper-focused on cracking through at the thickest point because, well, Soviet doctrine. But you guys, what do you guys, if you guys were in Zelensky's shoes, where would you guys sort of, where would you guys choose to assault? Like, if you had to take a look at this big old...
Mariupol access.
Mariupol?
Yeah, I would say go south from Vuhledar or try and press more in Velika Novosilka. Like, that area only has really one thick line of defense. And then after that, sure, you'd have to use smaller roads. But I'd take the trade-off of worse road network to less fortification. Like, that's a trade-off I'll take any day. Like, people have shown that, like, supply lines in this world will run over anything. Like, they will run across the worst, shittiest, like, fucking dirt road if they have to.
Richard, which axis did you say?
So, either push south from Vuhledar, you know, where the Russians were, like, failing a lot there.
Okay.
Or like double down on Velika Novosilka. Velika Novosilka is where they captured those small villages in the beginning of the offensive.
Towards
the silent there, yeah.
Yeah, Nikishny.
Yeah.
Towards
so
Berdyansk.
Over there, they head towards Berdyansk from Velika Novosilka or Mariupol from Vuhledar if they manage to crack that place. I think that would be my two choices. Definitely not Tokmak. Like,
I would, yeah.
Tokmak has defensive lines running along the roads. They don't cut the roads. It runs along the road. It's probably the most annoying thing that you can do in terms of defending territory. Like, I don't like that. I would rather try to cut through one defensive line and use worse roads than try to cut through, I don't know how many there are here, three or four.
Wait, 4 if you include Tokmak.
Yeah.
The goal is, I think they're still sticking with the goal of trying to thunder on it. The goal should be now to try to bring that main supply road under Ukrainian fire. They can keep launching drone strikes at the Kerch Strait Bridge and try to damage the Russian logistics as much as possible there. But if the Russians still have that Mariupol line, then it's still very hard to cut that Chernihiv grouping of Russian forces out. But if they can bring that road under fire, then it'll be a lot easier for them.
Yeah.
But again, that's a difficult...
They should focus more on railway strikes, places like Melitopol, Berdyansk. Try to get their partisans to be more more active. Even though they are like the Russians do repair railways really quickly. I don't know. It needs to be kind of like an offensive across all terrains. But I'm not gonna like. I find myself like.
It's
I
hard
want to
to
tell the Ukrainians, like, hey, dude, you're not doing this right, because they know they are thinking about these things, and they are aware that this isn't easy. Like they're responsible. Like, yeah, genius, you do it, and I would tell them, yeah, I probably can't either, man. I'm nobody, you know, like. It's a really hard thing. I think we can probably like say like. Tell about the really obvious things, like when it was like with I felt comfortable saying that they should have left Bakhmut earlier, for example. Like, it wasn't a big deal when they left it, and they wasted too much manpower there. I could say that. but
wasted too much veteran manpower. I mean,
yeah,
losing the
asking me
TDS.
about the South, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, fuck. I wish there was
That-
somebody with more experience in fighting this war to tell me where to attack.
That's it's probably one of the most difficult operations since the First World War, in terms of trying to breach that line and trying to do it.
And you don't have the air power. You don't all the fucking NATO
No, the
good old
enemy
boys.
has the air power, for God's sake.
Yeah.
The Russians have the air power. It's not it would be a difficult task at the best of times. Even for the US military, it would still be a bitter fight, even though they probably would make it.
I think the US could do it, but the US is the US.
It still wouldn't be 73 Eastings. It would still be a hard fight. But no European military could do it.
No, I think the best equipped European militaries would at best be able to match what Ukraine has done so far. I don't think any of them would have done better. None of the usual suspects, the Western Europeans, apart from France, maybe I couldn't see any of them holding. Italy, no. Britain, no. Germany, no. Spain, fucking lol. Portugal, what? With their 3 artillery guns and 3 tanks? That's how they're holding. As I said, the big European militaries are, funnily enough, Poland, that gave everything to Ukraine, and I think that Poland in Ukraine's position would have done about the same. I would say they would have a qualitative advantage in terms of soldiers and training over the Ukrainians, but less equipment than the Ukrainians started with.
I don't know even about that, because the Ukrainians had 8 years of combat experience when the war started.
True, they had a lot of veterans.
Which counts for a lot.
As I said, I see Poland as a rough equivalent, and then again, apart from France, maybe Greece and Turkey would have the equipment stockpile to possibly mirror things that Ukraine has done this war. I mean, both of them have a stronger air force than Ukraine started with, much stronger air force, and both of them have around the same. I mean, Turkey way more tanks than Ukraine started with. Greece about the same number. And we don't have deep stockpiles, though, like Ukraine perhaps did. Not the same artillery parks, for sure.
Definitely not the same SAM stockpiles.
Yeah. So I think that when we're saying that no European military could have done this, I agree. Looking at this offensive, all of those snarky fucking NATO guys, fuck off. Maybe the US could do it, and that's it. That, in my view,
yeah, that's about accurate.
It's worrying. I'll say that much.
Yeah, I feel this light in the tunnel that we had before the offensive, that path to victory seems like it's getting further away. But I'm not ready to give up. What for me, it's fucking. We need to be yelling at the Western partners to be hey, dude, you need to get your shit together, because this is gonna be embarrassing. Okay, this is gonna be. This is gonna be so embarrassing. It's gonna be no tomorrow. I mean, the thing is, they probably know that the Western audience cares. You know what I mean? If you ask them, they're sure, yeah, no, Ukraine, yeah, this is still going on. Yeah, right. Yeah, we still support Ukraine. But when it comes to day to day, the Western audience doesn't interact with their militaries. They don't interact with their stockpiles. They don't know anything about it. They don't care. They don't give a shit. They don't think about Ukraine day to day. Most of the people that I speak to, which are fucking college kids, right, that are my age, they're in their 20s. When I bring up the war in Ukraine, they're oh yeah, that's still going on. What's going on with the war in Ukraine, man? Do tell. I'm been a few things, you know. It's like some of them heard about the coup attempt in Russia. That was fun. I got a lot of questions. People were sending me like messages on Messenger. They were like, "Hey, dude, what's going on there?" I said, "Well, fuck, man, fuck if I know. I'm cooking popcorn over here."
I almost understand it less now than I did when it fucking happened. It's fucking ridiculous. I mean,
no, it is. Dude, like, the thing is, the wars are gonna keep getting goofier, trust. Like, that's the thing, like, the more, I think we just learn more of the shenanigans of war, that now. It's not up to the historians, we learn it in real time, and it's so bewildering. But I think, honestly, having studied, like, so many wars, I feel like this shenanigans exists, and you'll find it. Like, fuck, like, you wanna laugh at a war for a very long time. Look at the what was it, the Bolivia
Chile
war.
the war of the Triple Alliance. Wait, 1941. Oh fuck.
No, there was a war in 1941 between I think what was it?
Bolivia and Paraguay.
Or Bolivia and Paraguay in South America, completely separated from World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it came down to who had the most water, and the armies lost because of water. I think Bolivia lost that war against Paraguay. It's honestly it's hilarious. Basically, nobody knows about it, and it's one of the goofiest wars I've ever read about. Yeah, wait.
Beat up Ecuador versus Peru.
Oh, sorry, Peru, Ecuador. Yeah, that's the one in 1941. The Bolivia-Paraguay war was before that, 1932 to 35. Other mean war, but the Peru-Ecuador war, Peru won, I think, pretty convincingly. Whatever, irrelevant stuff. This is just like my rambling stuff.
No, I get it.
Yeah, look at that, dude. Bolivia is supported by Czechoslovakia. That's so ridiculous. And Paraguay is supported by Italy. Jesus, man.
Oh, you never want the Italians on your side.
Yeah, no, getting the Italians on your side. Yes, and the Bolivians had taken this German World War I general. They were super proud that they had a German World War I general, like commanding their troops that had all this experience, and the guy was a fucking moron. So they got a bad bargain there. They didn't get any of the good ones. They got an incompetent one. Whatever. This is all irrelevant. I gotta go, guys. It's 1:30 in the morning here.
I better head off as well.
Oh yeah. What is it, like 8 a.m. give or take? 8:30.
It's morning for you, huh?
Yeah. I better get to it as well, and yeah, it's been great discussing with you. Final thoughts before we head off?
Final thoughts. Fucking Europeans, get your shit together, start producing stuff, like, and bite the bullet. I get it. It's not best for economy. Go choo choo after the war, but yeah.
It'd probably be the best for Europe's economy if it just ramps up, right? Because wars are great for high-end production, but nobody ever wants it.
It would be best for the European economy just to be good to immigrants, and they haven't done that for a while. So the Europeans don't do what's best for their economy a lot of the time. So they're like, hey, you can just use Southern Europeans. Why use why use foreigners when we have our very own poor people that can study in their universities and come work for our health systems? Fuck it, whatever. It's a mess. Yeah, that's my final thoughts. I'm cooked. I'm tired. Have a good one, guys. I'll see you later.
And Sam?
Bye bye.
Yeah, my final thoughts would just be keep an eye on Bakhmut. The Ukrainians had quite a bit of success treating those VDV forces there. If they can achieve if they can take over the area to the south of Bakhmut, they can probably have a good chance of retaking the entire city in the long term. But that's the sort of political victory they need to sort of keep the supplies coming, which I think is probably the most important thing in the near term.
Nice. Okay.
Anyway, it's been great chatting with you, James.
Great chatting with you. I have to. We have to do another one, maybe in like a few weeks or so, when I get the tech figured out, so it's not janky as fuck.
Sounds like a plan. Have a great day.
You too. Have a good. Hey, have a nice night or day and morning, because morning, Red.
I've got a pack. Catch up.
Catch it. Thanks everybody else for tuning in. What will Getting Back Moot do apart from a propaganda win? Apart from a propaganda win, not much. It'll. Well, as you can look at the map, right? There's a lot of Russian units here, so pushing onto Bakhmut, if they take it on favorable terms, right? It'll allow them to squeeze the contingent there and attrit the manpower there, but that they're also going to suffer similar casualties for their own force grouping. So it's sort of a mixed bag. Shit going down in Niger. I barely don't. I don't even want to talk about that. That's just depressing as fuck. That's Egypt. Scrolling through the Sahara up north. Right around here. That's Mali. Now I feel dumb as shit. Niger is like, okay, before anybody says anything, Niger was not in fact a CIA coup, even though knowledgeable people who are shitposting said that it is a CIA coup. They were just having a laugh. The Nigerian government, not Nigerian, is... Well, yeah. To allay any confusion, Nigeria, Niger. Why are they next to each other? Nobody knows. Well, actually, blame the British. The Nigerian government was arguably the U.S. and France's most reliable partner in the Sahel, countering the various jihadist groups roaming around, mostly in the north, in these mountains from Gao to Agadez. Fuck. Yes, the Niger River. I forgot that is in fact a thing, even though it's not. It's barely a serious river. Let's be fully honest here. Okay, I'm gonna piss off the Niger River fanboys. But yeah, the Nigerian government was arguably the most reliable partner that France and the U.S. had. You might remember a few years ago, a handful of U.S. Green Berets died fighting alongside Nigerian soldiers. Fuck. I'm gonna just pull up the location. Yeah, there. Near the village of Tongo Tongo, which is, northern southern Niger. It was one of these splotches of village or forests near Tongo Tongo. Actually, it might be this one. A bit embarrassed that Google doesn't have the roads mapped out fully, but whatever. Oh yeah, that one. That's It's the British. We can't expect them to be very great at locations. But yeah, the Nigerian government's like the one competent Sahelian state that's actually halfway decent at fighting jihadists, right? Love the Shadians to death, but their government is a bit embarrassing. It's basically a junta. The Malians are flagrantly have a junta, plus Wagner's showing up. Wagner's also showing up to their car. Wagner's popped their heads actually, okay, well, it's a mix. I'm pretty sure there's a Wagner base around here supplying the Rapid Support Forces, otherwise known as the Janjaweed, at Khartoum, which is... Fuck. Nobody show this to my Sudanese friends. They'll be very mad that it took more than 10 seconds to find Khartoum. We should probably have a live stream. That's a great idea. We'll do a live stream exploring the Sudanese Civil War. But back to the topic at hand. Wagner is funneling guns into Sudan. Chad is flirting with Wagner as well, so it's a bit of a mess. The only staunch Western partner was Niger. And the Russians probably just couped it. I should caveat that by saying that various Western Africa hands are saying that we shouldn't say that it was the Russians yet, but let's be completely honest here. In all probability, it was the Russians. Because even though there's a lot of churn in Sahelian governments, I guess Sahelian and sub-Saharan governments, there was not really much of a point for launching a coup. Well, I take that back. There wasn't really a point for launching most coups. I'd say it's 60-40 chance that it was probably Wagner that helped with the coup. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or thoughts, etc.? And did everybody find the information in the link all good? I will take that as a yes and say thank you for tuning in to the first live stream here at Analytica Camelus. And, well, we'll hope to catch you guys in another one in a few weeks. Maybe we'll have a vote on what to cover. But, yeah, thanks for tuning in. But hopefully it won't be as janky next time.